Big Podcast.
It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. I'm David Hooper. Building a big podcast is what I do. More specifically, it's what I help you do. I'm here to help you grow your audience, get more people interested in what you're talking about, make more money with your message, make more impact with your message. BigPodcast.com is the site. Every week I've got a newsletter. It is called Big Podcast Insider. Big Podcast Insider goes out every Friday morning, New York time. If you want to get that via email, if you want to see an issue, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It's free. Take a look. If you feel like it's going to help you to do the things that I'm talking about, growing your audience, making people care about your message, making more impact with your message, you can subscribe on the site, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Everything that I'm talking about in this episode, it's going to be linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This episode, by the way, brought to you by Riverside. It's the leading platform to record studio quality remote podcast and also video. So if you like to connect with people via video, maybe you put the video out, maybe you don't. Maybe you feel it's just something that helps you to have better rapport with somebody, better communication. Riverside's got you. It's used by over 70,000 people and companies. Big podcasts that you've listened to, Guy Raz uses it. Gary Vee uses it. It records locally on each person's computer, then it uploads it to the cloud. Sometimes when you hear a remote podcast, and who's not doing remote podcasts these days? Everybody. And if you hear something that's like, meow, 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 it means that signal's getting lost in the internet somewhere. That's not an issue with Riverside. You get crystal clear audio, and as important for you getting the podcast interview that you want, it is easy to use. You simply send your guest a link, send your co-host a link. You got a Chrome browser, you are good to go. It's as simple as opening up a website. Right now, you can try it for free. Riverside.fm is the URL. You got enough time to do at least a couple of interviews. If you want to stick around and do more, I've got a coupon for you. That coupon gets you 15% off for life. So whether you stay for a month, a year, several years, you're going to get that 15% discount, save yourself a lot of money. Riverside.fm, the coupon Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. Check out the free trial. If you like it, stick around, use that code. That's Riverside.fm, BIGPODCAST, Big Podcast. That's the coupon to use. This episode, the audio version of my newsletter, Big Podcast Insider. Again, everything is linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com, and I do it like an old school audiobook. You can read along with it. You'll know when it's time to turn the page, or in this case, go to the next story when you hear this sound. You ready? Let's get to it. Let's talk about like, know, and trust. That's something you hear a lot of podcasters talk about. Well, you got to like, know, and trust somebody. If somebody doesn't like, know, and trust you, they're not going to buy from you. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to do business with you, whatever. Chances are you've heard this before. Those three words are used together a lot. And that may be why you're doing your podcast. A lot of people do podcasts not to get business directly, not to sell ads, but because they want to come across as approachable. They want people to like them, to get to know them, and they want people to trust them. That makes any sales that they do a lot easier. But what people rarely mention is a fourth item. That is a quality that you will also need to be successful with listeners, and possibly the main reason people listen to your podcast in the first place. People forget agree with. For you to have maximum connection with a listener, they need to like, know, and trust you. That's 75% of this. That final 25% to round it out, agree with. I want you to consider the highest paid radio personality of all time, Rush Limbaugh. Like him or hate him, when he died, 15.5 million people listened to him weekly. The top 5 guys right now, I don't know, maybe 5 million people. It's a lot of people, don't get me wrong. But that's not giving those guys anywhere near the impact that Rush Limbaugh had. It's not giving them anywhere near the money that Rush Limbaugh made. And Rush was in the business for a long time, started out in the 70s. I played his air checks before. You want to hear him? All right, check this out.
14K, Terry Jacks and Seasons in the Sun. Jeff Christie in Pittsburgh serving humanity at 9:48.
Honey, get your body.
We're production. Also appearing with Shana Na and opening the show be Billy Cook's Rainbows and Gypsies. See the exciting Day of the Dolphin, rated PG, now showing at the Ardmore Drive-In, Bellevue, Bethel Cinema, Camp Horn Drive-In, Carnegie Cinema, and Cinema World. Day of the Dolphin also showing at the Hampton Plaza, McKee Cinema, Oaks, Penn Hills, Regent, and Rockton Theaters. See Day of the Dolphin now at the Sewickley, South Hills, South Park Drive-In, South Hills Drive-In, and Sunset View Drive-In. I certainly hope you people are writing all of this down. Don't miss the Day of the Dolphin. It is now showing at a theater or drive-in near you. 14K. Jeff Christie at 9:54. 14K. Exorcist is now on its 16th record-breaking week at the Warner Theater downtown. 14K. It's going to be mostly cloudy, a chance of some showers tonight. Low tonight 53, variably cloudy and warm tomorrow night, and Easter Sunday morning, afternoon high Saturday at 72.
President Nixon's California tax W is silent.
14K.
That's Rush Limbaugh from back in the 70s, known as Jeff Christie, playing rock and roll just like the rest of us. Well, maybe not us. We're podcasters, but anybody who's ever done radio, you've probably done a similar gig to that. It wasn't really bringing his personality out. It wasn't really bringing out who he was. He didn't take off until he started doing talk radio. 15.5 million people, that is a lot of people to listen to somebody every week. But it didn't have the impact you would think, at least when it came to changing the minds of people. Rush Limbaugh was in an echo chamber. Aside from a few people who used to hate listen to him, you know what I mean? Hate listen. I was one of those people. Sometimes I'd turn him on, just make my blood boil. So who is this guy? But he was such a great host, I couldn't deny it. And there were things that I could learn from him. He was so smooth on the mic, the way he would handle callers, even when he was completely deaf. You know this, right? Completely lost his hearing, probably due to OxyContin. He had a history of abusing opioids. That's one of the side effects. Completely lost his hearing to where he couldn't even hear the telephone ring. That's where he was. And they were having to type a transcript of his callers as they would call in. He would read the transcript. He would have a conversation. Sounded rural. You can go back and listen to those old tapes. He wasn't hearing himself correctly. He's like, what's wrong with Rush? He seems a little bit slower now. He sounds different. Well, he couldn't hear himself. He couldn't hear the callers. He was interacting with them by somebody transcribing the callers as they were calling in. And look, he was doing the best he can, but you had arguably a time before this was known to the public where it wasn't the best radio, the very level of quality that he was used to doing. I say this to say that he had so many people that agreed with him that wanted to feel that it was okay for them to feel what they were feeling. And he planted that flag and said, I feel this way. It's okay for you to feel this way. That's what that does. They would listen to him. They would buy his stuff. But what he did not do was change minds. And that gets back to what I'm talking about. If somebody agrees with you, they are more likely to listen to you. I want you to consider this when you do your next episode. The most successful hosts are not trying to convince people. They're like Limbaugh. They're like Hannity. They're like Tucker Carlson. They are flying a flag and inviting people to come along. Now, I just listed 3 conservative hosts. I'm not saying that you need to be conservative. I'm saying you fly your flag, whatever your flag is. Nobody wants a milquetoast podcaster who tries to play both sides. Nobody wants you to try to keep everybody happy. Listeners want somebody with an authority, and that's you, simply because you have a podcast. And they want that person to say, I feel this way. And because I feel this way, and I'm letting everybody know, there's 15 million people, or maybe for you, it's 100, 1,000, 2,000 people. Because I feel comfortable letting people know this, it is okay for you to feel comfortable letting people know this. Or if not, at least it's okay for you to feel this way. A lot of people feel alone. The people who listen to us, they're not necessarily connected to a crowd of like-minded people. So they've got these thoughts. And that's where you come in. These thoughts are fine. And again, I'm not saying conservatism. Maybe it's somebody who needs to come out of the closet. And you're a gay radio host. You say, I came out of the closet, and this is how it worked for me. And you bring in people who have come out of the closet. They connect with you. They agree with who you are. You are showing them strength that maybe they don't have yet. But through your strength, they can develop their own strength. So I want you to consider that. Nobody wants milquetoast. Don't try to play both sides. Don't try to keep everybody happy. You keep your people happy. Like, know, trust. That's 75%. But agree with. Give people something that they can connect to. Fly your flag. How are you doing that? I want to know. Reach out to me at David Hooper on Twitter. If you need help with it, you got questions, reach out to me. I'll give you some tips at David Hooper on Twitter. By the way, I'm finishing out a manuscript. It's my upcoming podcast launch book. I've talked about it. I'm looking for some very specific podcaster examples. I put a couple of these up there today. Things that I'm looking for, stories that I want to tell. Maybe you have one of those stories. If you follow me on Twitter, at David Hooper is the username. I've got up-to-the-minute requests as I'm going through this manuscript. Hey, I need a story here. I put it up on Twitter. I'm looking for this, blank, 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 blank. Right now, I'm looking for segments Right now, I'm looking for people who've gone on a journey, an A to Z journey. I'm doing 30 days of this. I'm doing 60 days of this. I'm trying to lose 10 pounds. I'm trying to do whatever. I'm looking for these stories. And as I need them, that's where they're going. Twitter, at David Hooper on Twitter. Samsung podcast. You know, refrigerators play podcasts now. Isn't that crazy? Imagine this. You're at a friend's bougie house. You're getting a bougie drink out of his bougie refrigerator. And you tell it, hey, Samsung, play Build a Big Podcast. Boom. Your podcast comes up on the refrigerator. How cool would that be? Samsung Podcast wants you on its platform. They want to make that happen for you. This is going to make your podcast available not only on their refrigerators, but on Samsung phones and other smart devices. And it's super easy to get connected. I've got a link for you. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. All you need to do is submit your RSS feed. Boom. You are hooked up. You're on refrigerators, smartphones, other smart devices instantly. Related to this, I've got a link there that'll help you better control your RSS feed. All of this linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Let's talk about how to get booked on podcasts. You want people to like you, know you, trust you, agree with you. It helps if you can borrow an audience and get booked on other people's podcasts. Then you bring them in. Then you get them to come to your podcast. Podcast-focused PR agency Lemon Pie says there's 6 steps to getting booked as a guest on podcasts. Here they are. Do you agree with these? 1, define your topics and unique points of view. There you go. Planting your flag. How are you going to stand out? 2, create a prospect list. You can do this by going to podchaser.com, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, looking at other podcasts that are very similar to yours, or maybe not related to yours, but sort of related. Something where the audience might not know that what you've got is for them. Regardless of how you choose to do it, creating a prospect list, then pitching those podcast hosts. That's the 3rd step. Following up with the host, that's the 4th step. 5th step, coordinating and booking. The 6th, prepping for the interview. Of course, there's more to it that you need to consider. I've got an entire process linked for you at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. There's also some great advice on a media kit. Headshot, bio, under 2 paragraphs is what they recommend, and I recommend that as well. You don't want to give somebody a huge bio. Have you ever done this or heard a podcast where they'll do this? You give somebody a full sheet, and the host will read it with you on the line. It's like, When you do that as a host, you're not letting anything come out in the discovery process. It's going to be more interesting for listeners when you say, here's my guest. He's done this, this, and this. Quick tease. Again, 1 or 2 paragraphs. And then as the interview goes on, you discover things. I've mentioned it here before that I did casting for Victoria's Secret booking for their audio talent. Pretty cool, right? Got stories. There are models involved because there are models that are coming in through the agency. People discover that about me. People discover the bands that I've worked with. It's like you being on a date, going to an Italian restaurant, and your date orders an Italian. Like, ooh, wow. I didn't know that. You never told me you did Italian. Or being at a wedding, and your date knows how to dance. What? I didn't know you knew how to dance. It's a surprise. It keeps people interesting. You want to bring that out of your guest. That's something that you want for yourself. Don't give away everything in the intro. The other thing that you want to do in these media kits, company links, social links, your host will go to that, make it easy on them. So when at the end, they don't have to verify that. What was your social link? My social link is at David Hooper on Twitter. It's already on the sheet. You don't have to have that conversation. Host gets straight to the point, sends people to your Twitter, sends people wherever you want. Also, topics that you typically cover. If the host gets lost, it's something nice that you can do for the host. If it's a busy host, if it's somebody who's got a lot of interviews in one day, and this happens. Sometimes we'll do these junkets, 2, 3, 4 interviews in a day. Sometimes it's nice to have that just in case. You want to make your host look good. You want the host to make you look good. These are easy things that you can do. I've got all this linked. It's in a great article. It's newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I've got a way for you to organize your assets. If the host needs a 500 by 500 photo, if he needs a 3,000 by 3,000 photo, boom, one link, the host can get it instantly. This is going to make it so much easier for you to book yourself on podcast or have somebody else book you, and also for you to have a successful interview via a podcast. So check it out, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is a big one. This is coming this week, Audacity 3.2. I've been fooling around with the beta version. It's super cool, man. It's got a lot of things people have been asking about. Non-destructive editing, meaning when you make an editing decision, it's not permanent. You can go back. You can fool around with things. You can stack the effects differently. What sounds better? How do you make yourself sound better? Audacity, if you don't know, it's the world's most popular open source DAW, digital audio workstation. It's been downloaded 111 million times since 2015. And that's just since 2015. I've been using the thing for, 2002, I think I started. Love it or hate it, it's had a huge impact on podcasting. Again, version 3.2, it's coming in just a few days. What has changed? I mentioned the non-destructive editing. There's some other cool things. And I've got a link for you that's going to give you the changes. It's going to show you exactly what's new, kind of like the new operating system that just came out for iPhone, iOS 16. Apple's got this video. Here's what's new in iOS 16. It makes it where you instantly know how to use it, instantly know how it's going to make your life better. Mike Adams has done this for you. He's got an Audacity version update site. It is free. It is linked. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com is where to get it. And if you use Audacity, you want to check it out because 3.2, it's got some very cool stuff that's going to make your podcast sound so much better. I cannot wait to see the final release because the beta, absolutely amazing so far. Oops, shouldn't have hit publish. How many times have you done this? Maybe it's a blog post. Maybe it's your podcast. If you haven't done it, by the way, you're not putting out enough episodes. You hit publish and think, I left off a track. There's 20 minutes of blank space at the end that I didn't cut off. I've got a funny joke for you. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It's a meme. I can't explain it. You know those things. You got to see them, experience them. It's not fun to hear somebody talk about it. So go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Oops, shouldn't hit publish. You're going to relate to this as a podcaster. I'm curious, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made with your podcast production? I've got a link for you to join in on the discussion. We all make them. Hopefully we can learn from each other. Check out the discussion at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Find influencers. 6 easy steps to choose the right ones. You might not be looking for an influencer to help promote your podcast, but this is still good information because companies who are looking for influencers, those are the companies that advertise on podcasts. And this article has information on how these companies are finding those podcasts. You want to be on that short list of these companies that are finding podcasts to advertise on. This is assuming you want advertising. And it ain't bad, man. It's nice passive income for something that you are already doing already. Long story short, it's how people are finding you. It's how people are judging you. It's how they are making the decision on whether or not to hire you. If you're curious about it, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. That is it. Everything that I've talked about is linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, and you do, because I've got some great stuff coming up, you want to go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I have 3 links for you, one for Android, one for iPhone, one for RSS, and I've got a bonus 4th option. Go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe on your desktop, pull out your phone, point your camera at it, boom. It's good to go. See how I'm doing it? Steal the idea. Do it. Do it. This is easy for you to set up. And I promise you, it will double the amount of subscribers that you have if you promote it correctly. It makes it so easy for people to subscribe and so easy for them to get the podcast in a way where they will actually listen to it. It's one thing for somebody to subscribe on a desktop. Most people are not listening on desktops. People listen on mobile phones. If you're in your car, you can play podcasts via your car stereo. If you're at the gym, you can play podcasts via earbuds. Mobile is where you want to be. And to do that, QR code is the way to do it. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Steal this idea. I guarantee you. You will double your podcast subscribers. You'll have more listeners, more interaction. More people will like you, know you, trust you, and agree with you if you're flying your flag. Everything I've talked about, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Sign up now, subscribe before you forget, and I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.
David Hooper then does the same thing. He actually talks about the stories on his podcast and says, if you want to see this, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. And he does that very well because I know it's newsletter.bigpodcast.com because he repeats it over and over, newsletter.bigpodcast.com.